A hearty warm welcome to you, my Kisima family, wherever you are. It's a beautiful day, not because of the weather outside, but because this is the day that the Lord has made. We shall rejoice and be glad in it. And this is our second podcast that addresses matters of the kingdom of God. If you remember well, our first one was about a local church destined for greatness, DFG in short, that went to do an outreach in Khayelitsha, Rens. It was an interesting one, and I know some of the people were like, a church in Rens, and others were like, oh wow, that's a fresh approach of doing an outreach. Mfundisi Uluthando Tofu is our guest today. We're going to have a conversation with him on a very interesting topic, which I think, Mfundisi, this topic is going to benefit not only people, church people, inverted commas, not only believers, but also someone who has been having questions, about God, about maybe Christian faith or different faiths, but without getting much into the topic itself, let me first ask you to greet our listeners, and then we can proceed with our conversation.
Yeah, it's a pleasure to be here, and thank you for having me, and greetings to all the listeners at home, on the way, wherever they may be. Thank you for having me.
Awesome. All right, Mfundisi, today we are going to have a conversation on kingdom leadership.
Yeah.
And our subtopic there, because this is part one of the conversation, and it is self-leadership. Very interesting. I always hear people, it's been years now where, there's been a cry that in Africa generally, we lack leadership. Then you will hear in our government, in politics, we lack leadership. Church, we lack leadership. Everyone is saying we lack leadership. But what is leadership? What is leadership? So today we're going to have a conversation on kingdom leadership, but I guess it will be safe and it will be, beneficial to all of us to first unpack, or rather, what's your understanding of leadership?
Yes. Well, there's a variety of books written on the topic, and I wouldn't want to reinvent the wheel.
Okay.
More than just to highlight that when we're talking leadership, we're talking the ability to influence.
Yes.
Basically. Then we can then look at how you lead is critical.
Okay.
But the broader sense of leadership is the ability to exert influence. But I think as you're relating the whole issue of Africa, it's how you lead that's most critical.
Okay.
And also maybe to take it even a step back, it's why you lead.
Oh,
that's
wow.
also and that's also a critical question. You can lead, and there's nothing stopping you from lead, whether you're leading one person or leading 20 people or leading 1,000 people. But why you lead and how you lead are most critical. Whether then that's making a positive impact that achieves the intended outcome, or you're leading for other reasons that might have a negative impact in the lives of people.
And I guess also the why will assist in sustaining whatever you're leading.
Definitely, because if you don't answer the why, then your outcomes will have results that you might regret in the long run, or that people you lead might regret. Most often what I find is that people are in leadership roles without understanding why they are there and to what end they are leading. So then they use a style of leadership that then doesn't allow them to get to where the people need to be.
Wow.
And that I find most problematic in the church, if I may say.
All right.
It's most problematic in the church because the tendency of many people who are in leadership roles is that they're duplicating what they've seen other people doing without first asking the question, why am I leading? How am I leading? And to what end am I leading?
All right.
Yes.
Nditshilo ndathi this is Umfundisi Uluthando Tofu. So uthetha from experience because it's also leading a local church, or rather a couple of branches, the local church. So I just thought, Umfundisi, let me highlight this part because Omnyumdu might be listening and thinking, how can he speak like that about the church? So he knows what he's talking about. He's part of the family. All right. So yes. So Sithe, today our focus is on self-leadership.
Yes.
Under the theme Kingdom Leadership. So let's talk about self-leadership. We've briefly defined what leadership is based on, of course, so many authors that have done intense research on the topic of leadership.
Yes.
And now I think also now my interest would be for us to take the conversation forward. Perhaps let's talk then about where does leadership begin? Because now you've mentioned the why you lead and the how you lead. Not mentioned, but you've highlighted the importance of understanding why you lead and how you lead. Those two critical aspects of leadership. So now, where does that begin? Where does it all begin?
So just to say also that I will probably bring in a scope that might help a person who's also in business or in other sectors. Right. But I'll reference the church because I want to root it in a theological view.
Oh, wow.
That will then help people function in other spaces. And making examples using the church, because that's a common language people understand when you're talking kingdom.
Yes, leadership. Absolutely.
And so I would say when we're talking about leadership, you can't start externally. It has to start internally.
Okay.
That's why now one of the first critical things we have to address is the whole issue of self-leadership.
Okay.
Because you can only lead people as far as you have gone yourself. So in this area of self-leadership, most people take it for granted that they find themselves in leadership positions without mastering the art of leading themselves first. And that art of leading yourself first gives a pattern for how you are going to lead others. And if you don't master the art of self-leadership first, then there are implications to that. Because the whole area of self-leadership is about formation. It's about your own personal formation.
Wow. And
if you don't reach a level of maturity in your own personal formation, then that will ultimately impact how you lead others. I'll make an example on that. In that, most people you find to be insecure in how they treat others. I see you, I'm leading you, but now when I find that you are exceeding what I have achieved, then I start to be insecure. That is a sign of a flaw in my formation, in my own. So it's not your fault. It's my fault, but I'm articulating it as if it's your fault.
Sure.
But it's actually a sign of a deficiency in my own self-leadership. I have not come to a place of understanding fully who I am and maturing in that. Such that now when external factors impact who I am, then I react in certain ways that show my immaturity.
Then on that note, Mfundisi, sure, assuming a position of leadership, is it something that somebody else identify in me and appoints me to occupy a position of leadership, or is it something that I feel that, you know what, I'm ready to lead? How does it happen? How does it come to effect, the fact that I lead? I happen to lead people.
Yeah.
Because now I'm trying to connect with what you've just mentioned, Okuti, the danger of leading whilst, if there's still a lack in formation,
Yes.
So that means there's a wablisha in my leadership.
Yeah, I mean, this is an age-old conversation where people would argue whether leaders are made or leaders are born.
Okay.
It can border in that whole conversation, but I think both apply.
Okay.
But also keeping in mind that when we're talking kingdom, then we're not merely talking about people who are called to follow. We're talking about people who automatically are brought into a space of leadership, whether they are matured for it or not. Then the development or the formation happens. And so for me, I would distinguish it there that when the minute you come to Christ, you come to a position or you are coming to a space of leadership, because then there are requirements upon you that are placed the minute you come to Christ. So and those requirements come with expectations. And so then that the issue becomes time. Do you then acquire enough time to be formed into the best kind of leader you can be? Whether you are leading one person, like I said in the beginning, whether you're leading one person or 100 people or 1,000 people.
To be formed by who?
I want to take it to the example of Jesus.
Okay, all right.
Let's take it to the example of Jesus. Jesus came into the world and he lived a mission that he had acquired from God.
Okay.
But I want us to see two sides of Jesus. One is the side of Jesus as the Son of God, which the Bible says, particularly, I think it's John that keeps referring to Jesus as the Son of God, and then I think it's Matthew who tries to humanize Jesus and continues to call him the Son of Man.
Okay.
So I don't want us to take those two pictures of Jesus for granted, because they speak something significant about him. One is that Jesus had to recognize and accept himself as a son of God and develop as a son of God before he became known as the Son of Man.
Okay.
Now, what does that mean? It means that Jesus had to get in touch with his true nature and identity and be settled in who he is as he was God. If I were man, then I would say, as I'm created by God. Being able to be balanced and in sync with my true nature as designed by God, that's where the formation of identity happens. Before people recognize who I am.
Sure.
And so what I work out first is the art of being before the art of doing. And so what the world continues to better and teach us, ihlabathi elisifundisa sona liyayibethelela lento, that you are as good as what you do.
All right.
But the word teaches us that you are as good as what you are being. So if you are not good in being, then what you actually do is not profitable to the kingdom.
Okay.
Why?
All right.
Because God does not separate the content from the container.
Wow.
Back to that.
Sure.
And so God has to work the man in order to develop the message properly.
All right.
So sometimes if the man is worked out before, or if the message or what is perceived to be the message becomes the focus before the man, then you will discover that a lot of people, even those who are preaching, don't have the message, but they are the man becomes a central figure. The message is not there. But when God is actually working out umuntu as amsebenza in the kingdom, he works out them. He works them out in parallel. In fact, he begins with the man.
Okay.
So that the message is well contained by the man, and there is no distinguishing the man from the message. So Jesus had to be known as the Son of God.
Wow.
Now, ndifuna ke sithi double tap on that.
Okay.
The area of being. Because most people are not at peace with who they are.
So true.
They are not formed in who they are.
Okay.
They run to what they can do, but they are not at peace with who they are. Two, most people are not in good relationship with who they are.
But what causes that? What are the? Because we only see a tip of an iceberg, but what are the underlying issues?
So I
of course, this is like a general question.
I firmly believe that the society we come into when we are born puts pressure on us to be productive towards what we do rather than what we are. So a child grows up, the minute ezalwa ekhule bheke esikolweni, first thing uzawubhekiswa esikolweni to be formed in a particular angle. And okwakubhekwa ke esikolweni kunendlela afuneka efunde ngayo.
Yes.
And kwasendlini xa ebuya kunemibuzo emanivele bamntana uzaba yintoni? Xa umdala ufuna ufundela quite in fact uthi
ufuna ufundela uba yintoni
xa umdala.
Oh my goodness. And song is a lo question. I like lo question.
Yes. And it does not work in who are you as by God's design.
Wow.
And so of manisbage, there are a variety of factors.
Sure.
Society, in other words, that's what we called, but that's how society forms you.
Okay.
Number 2, that's how your family forms you. Number 3, there are events that are going to happen in your life along the way that are going to make you dull
Good
to
and
yourself.
bad. I'm saying good and bad events.
Yes, good and bad.
Sure.
Umzekelo, this is an umzekelo ozawuthi. If you listen very carefully today, good generation ekhoyo, when we're talking about men, xa sithetha ngamadoda,
Sure.
amadoda, especially with ezi zinto zeblessing and but when you listen to women talking about amadoda,
Sure.
one thing is common, is that amadoda are most important when they function in providing certain things. So there's a very distinct shift.
Okay.
80. A man is only valuable when he's productive,
Okay.
not when he is. Yeah,
So
but
even if this man can abuse me emotionally, physically, and otherwise, as long as he provides.
as
at
long as he
least.
provides, it's fine. But
Sure.
that's an extreme.
Yeah. So
Even on the typical basis, normal level,
Okay.
the expectation is that indoda ngenkomo zayo, okanye indoda because he performs certain functions. So,
But mfundisi kaloku uyayiqonda into bana, isn't it in the word into ukuthi indoda ezodla ubila kwebunzi layo?
no, but andiyiphikisi.
Okay.
But what I'm getting at is that even today, into limited, kuba ufumanisa uba i-value yendoda comes from who he is rather than what he can provide. So siyeza nkonzweni uzawufumanisa uba oodade bajonga ubrother who can provide certain things rather than ubrother who is sensible in who he is.
Sure.
And settled in who he is.
Wow.
So ndizama ukuthi what the
Wow.
world does is blind us from the importance of self-leadership to isifake kwi-level ye-function. Are you functioning in a productive way? Asinamsebenzi noba kwenzeka napha. As long as you are capable of function, usebenza umsebenzi
I
alright.
could be a wounded leader walking around like usitsho
Exactly.
with a low self-esteem and all that, but if ndiyapusha
Exactly.
ukuba ndibonwe ndifunctiona right in this area, kukho results ezibonwayo, then it's everything is okay.
Exactly. So what does that do?
Sure.
What that do is that yenza abantu
Sure.
aba high performers with very low sense of identity. And that's a very terrible paradigm to have. So when we're
High
talking about
performance versus low.
yes, it's high performance
Yes.
versus low self-identity.
Okay. Sure. All right.
Can I be settled in my self-worth without me doing anything? As a pastor, can I be settled in my self-worth? Ubaba ngemka bonke ababantu. Ndingabi na buildings, ndingabi na minikelo, ndingabi na ntoni. Can I still be settled in my self-worth?
Wow.
Because then what happens is that when I'm not settled in my self-worth, I have to then supplement it with certain things. Supplementing it with izinxibo ezizawundi-identifier as a certain man or a certain person. Imoto ezawundi-identifier as a certain. So then I have to pull all these gimmicks to try and give this perception
Yes.
of this is my identity. But when you are settled in yourself, when you're settled in who you are, you don't need all of those things. But there's something very interesting that begins to happen. People start to get drawn with the inner muscle that you've developed in your self-identity. People, abantu bayakwazi uyinukisa, bayakwazi uyiva.
So true.
But this person, man,
Yes.
there is something
Kukho into ngaye.
ezinzileyo.
Yes.
Uyayiqonda? Akadingi ukuyenzisa, akadingi uyenzisa, akadingi uyongeza, akadingi uthini.
Nje i-presence yakhe nje.
Unguye i-presence yakhe. Uyabona ke ngoku, that for me speaks of when the content becomes one
With a
a
container.
container.
Wow.
And so when we're talking self-leadership, We are talking about you being able to lead yourself well first. Before you lead other people.
Okay.
Because in the end, is that if you lead other people well, but are unable to lead yourself, then you land yourself kula zone kuthiwa uyi-hypocrite. Uyi-hypocrite.
Okay.
And that was one of
Okay.
the struggles yesawayenazo ne-religious leaders of the time. Because they were leading people well, but they were not able to lead themselves well. So ithi ke ngoku le nto, if you are able to lead yourself well, uba ndixakwe ndizakwenza umzekelo ke olula, uba ndixakwe ngumuntu otshayayo, ndibe mna nam kwelam icala ndiyaziba apha ekutshayeni.
Sure.
I might be able to help that person get out, but that does not exempt me.
Okay.
For me, if I'm unable to lead myself well, ndizamkhupha njani lo?
Right.
Khona for that matter, the only way yenza kwazi umkhupha ngayo law is to give them a textbook related.
Of course, information.
Information.
Yes. So true.
Not an information that
based on your experience.
I've learned.
Yes.
Because naman kayeyisi le nto mohlulayo. And you find that ke ngoku, when you are talking about integrity in leadership, you can't have integrity in leadership without mastering the art of self-leadership first.
Okay.
Otherwise, uzaba ngumuntu okhomba indlela angayihambi. And that, in the end of the day, iyayidla i-sense of integrity yakho. And so, when we're talking about leadership, we are talking about its starting point is that how well are you doing with leading yourself?
Okay.
How well is your relationship between yourself, not with other people? You can relate well with other people, but ubuya fail to relate well with yourself, then the problem is on.
Okay. You know what? You've just mentioned something, and then Sandy's gone to, perhaps this is a gap, a coil caused by individuals that subscribe or claim to subscribe to the principles of the kingdom of God. Abe umntu ke nyani esastrugglisha, because kune expectation mfundisi kumntu ongeka khilekelwa ile khilekela umfundisi no Monica no Sipho no Monde mhlawumbi abazi identifier with Christian faith or with any other faith for that matter. And then you find that kunale expectation ke ngokulo yena ungeka bikho kwesa space sokuthi but umele uphila ngendlela ethile, umele wenza izinto ngendlela ethile, and when I fail ke ngoku ukuphila ngalendlela if that is prescribed by the word, then ke ngoku kubekho disappointment eyenzekayo kulo ebenale expectation bana, but I expected you to live differently or behave differently or do things differently kunam mnamntu ngekabikho kwesi space. So I'm listening to you and I'm like, oh, okay, perhaps ilapha ingxaki kwabanye bethu.
Yes. No, ilapho, because then if I'm hoping to be a leader that is able to guide people, is able to guide people out of their economic problems, I can't do that if I'm not being able to lead myself out of economic problems. So there's a direct connection. So with spirituality, I can't expect wena indobana ube kwi-level ethile spirituality ndibe mna ndingekho kuyo and or ndinendawo endizidojayo. I have to make sure that whatever I'm going to lead you into sendiqale ndafika.
Sure.
And I've mastered the art of ba umzimba wam, ingqondo yam, umoya wam, inhliziyo yam mayindimamele.
Sure.
Because what then happens is, especially, is a high risk, especially in ministry. Yendobana, you quickly grapple with the message. We are sindisa and all of that, and you learn the skill that goes with it. But if you have not mastered the art of self-leadership, then uzawambambi izawucaca at the end of the day. Uba no man, inyawo lakho ngokumfundisi alisahambi yona.
Sure.
Why? It's because you have so much focused on leading other people such that you have neglected leading yourself. That's why we then have to talk about izinto ezifana noba umfundisi uphumla nini and self-reflect.
Okay.
As part of your leadership. not as a side project, but as part of your leadership. Why? Because you understand that it's critical that you lead yourself a step ahead than the people you lead.
Wow.
Because then if they catch up to you and surpass you, uzawungabi nayo into yoba ubasekuyo. Ndizama ukubuyela ke ngokulaa mbuzo ukuthi where does this formation happen? It's a continuous process.
Okay.
The process of self-formation is continuous. You learn as you go.
Sure.
But what's most important is that as a leader, never attempt to allow the people you lead to be a step ahead of you leading yourself.
Okay.
Kufuneka wena usoloko ungaphambili. Even if it means sometimes ukwizinto zawuxinga kuzo kufuneka ba take a step back and address them within yourself. Do that, because one thing uThixo angayenziyo yinto bana xa ungene kwiclass akunyusele ungakhange uyipasa. Akayenzi lo nto uThixo.
So does it mean, Mfundisi, that as a leader, I always know more than the people that I'm leading? Am I always skilled? Am I always gifted and talented in everything than all these people that I'm leading? So leading, being a step ahead, kubantu that I'm leading, what does that mean?
Yabona ke, part of the problem is that we tend to view leadership in a lateral or in a vertical sense.
Okay.
When we're talking leadership in the kingdom, we're talking in a horizontal sense.
Okay.
Uba ndifaka upause ndizijonge mna does not make me less than where I was, but it enlarges the base, my internal base. Ndifunuza ke ngoku into ethi, when your internal base is not worked out properly in terms of your own self-leadership, uzawuyithatha into yoba ungazi ungumfundisi kubekho kumrhamento wazi ngaphezulu kwakho as a negative. But if your internal base is expanded and worked out well and well rooted, then you won't be intimidated by somebody who knows more than you.
Okay.
Into abangela uba ube intimidated is because if view yakho ye leadership is vertical, ucinga uba ungaphezulu. Kanti in the kingdom you don't function ngaphezulu, you function from the front. Now when you're functioning from the front, you have enough time to work out, because then you understand that you are also learning.
Yes.
And apho unyathela khona ke ngoku bazawunyathela bezemva kwakho. So it's never hierarchical. Because once you make it hierarchical, you are no longer a leader, you are a boss.
Sure.
Leadership in the kingdom is always horizontal. I am leading from the front. So in other words, I can't lead from the front without making an example of myself.
Sure.
Lo ndimkhokhela uza ngemva akabona umphambili wami ubona umva wami. So in other words, ubona apho ndinyathele khona akabona apho ndiya khona. So I have to then work out my base so that I cover my tracks well, ngoba they understand ukuthi lo uzemva kwami aka understand le ingaphambi kwami, understand le isemva kwami. So uba ndishika kuhle emva kwami, then ayisenamsebenzi lingaphambi kwami.
Isixhosa sinentetho emnandi esithi umqolo phandle.
Exactly.
So which means if nyani andenzi kahle, umqolo uzaba phandle literally.
Yes,
So which means
yes.
nolandela mna can see, you know, all the flaws and the mistakes.
Ungayibona incinci ke wena lo nto. Into bana you take 2 steps back to fix the self-leadership problems within you.
Sure.
Kanti for ozemva kwakho yena, it's a lesson.
Wow.
And ifane nalento into bana inkokheli ingakwazi uthi xa ibhudile ithi hey imani bantu ibhudile.
Yeah.
Ayenzwa kanje.
Yes.
Bendi wrong.
Absolutely.
Why? It's because he views himself from the top and thinks that ababantu are meant to see the perfect picture. Yeah,
Sure. Yeah,
these
ne?
people are meant to see that. There's a reason why the Bible is written ngale ndlela ibhalwe ngayo.
Okay.
Where it provides the achievements and the flaws of people within the story. Okay. And so the challenge here to Gengogo is that we have leaders that think they must be perfect in order for the people who come before. Kukho abantu ekufuneka bekubonile into bana uwenjani wavuka njani. So that nabo xa be ngoba abakujongi from the perspective yoba bevukile, abanye bakujonga from the perspective yoba bewile and are wondering banza uvuka njani. Xa bekubonile ukwazi ukuthi sorry, ukwazi ukuthi ndiphazamile, ukwazi ukuthi ndibethekile, they are gaining strength for themselves to be able to stand up.
Sure.
But when we hide our scars and show our glory, then iba khona ingxaki. Because then people don't have a pattern abakwaziyo ukuyilandela. And that's why I think even in scripture, a pattern yetembile was never formed in the promised land. It was formed in the desert.
Okay.
That can tell you something. But andifuna ungena kuyo ke leyo. But a pattern of worship was never formed sekulungile kukuhle in the promised land ezweni lamasinobusi. Basuka naye enhlango. Xa besakha itembile ezweni lesithembiso bakha itembile within a pattern yasenhlango.
My goodness. Sure. Yeah. This is Kingdom Leadership, and today, part 1, we're focusing on self-leadership. Umfundisi spoke about the identity, the importance of knowing your identity, or rather the difference between identity and functioning. That's what you highlighted. And
so Jesus as the Son of God formed the identity of Christ, but him being the Son of Man was a function towards his mission. Eben mission yoba az emhlabeni abe ngumuntu. So that was his mission, his function. Okay. But him recognizing that he's a Son of God was speaking solely to his identity. So often we have to find ukuthi we need to spend more time with our being more than our doing, so that our doing can be effective, based and influenced by our being.
Wow. I think for today, you know what, there's a lot that one needs to sit down and try to process and internalize, because one needs to be able to apply this information so that I can transform. Sure.
Because practical. Because I know there are people who supplement their identity so that ba perceived. Abanye says impahla umbone umuntu enxibe kakuhle, but internally
yes,
she can't deal with iflaws anazo yena. And omnye umbone ba imechanism yakhe is to be a joker.
Okay.
Uyajoka kumuntu wonke okanye uzama uba ebengathi, but when kuvalwa umnyango enguye uyastrugglisha to deal with his innocence.
Yeah.
My thing is that if you don't deal with leading yourself well, then whatever else you present out there, facade.
Sure.
Umfanekiso nje upaintela abantu ongenguwe. But when you're settled with who you are, then you are able to lead from a position of strength rather than from a position of weakness. And so izinto ezifana ne-doubt, izinto ezifana ne-manipulation, izinto ezifana noba uhlukumeza abantu, all of those emerge from is a lack of self-leadership.
My goodness.
Not from a lack of the word even, but from a lack of self-leadership. You can have the word, but you can't lead yourself well with the word. I think those are two different things. When we are talking about leadership, greed, corruption, are all proponents of self-leadership.
Okay, you know what? I-conversation you mean, because ke ngoku ndiyafuna uphinda ndiyithathe umenshine into abantu abamnyama, and I want us to ask then, if we were to look at it kuthi as the African nation, then you know exactly sifike njani apha. To get my point.
Yeah. I have to diminish someone else in order for me to commit corruption or crime or whatever. Ubanza kubulala, I have to bandikubone not as a human being, but as an animal. And that says something about me. That says something about the brokenness before you. Kuwe ukuze ndibe ndiyayenza lento, funeka ndingakuboni as umuntu. And for me to do that, it takes a lot. It takes a lot to convince myself that I can do this without being caught, or can do this without ukulimaza omunye umuntu. Noba ndiba 1,000 rand, noba ndiba 5,000 rand, I can do that. The only way I can do that is to diminish the other human and dehumanize someone else. And that speaks about my worth, my sense of self-leadership. So izinto ezininzi zonakala apho. Not kuba opportunity okanye kuba silamba, but zonakala in a sense of how do I lead myself and lead myself well.
Awesome. Fundisi, Nkosi kakhulu, thank you so much for your time. Thank you for your, I can connect with your heartbeat, the passion nje onayo. Wow, that was Umfundisi Uluthando Tofu on self-leadership in the kingdom of God. And I've noted some very interesting points, that Umfundisi mentioned in almost everything that is important that he spoke about. But I made some notes where he mentioned the importance of first mastering your self-identity. In fact, it's a journey, it's a process. It's not something that one can achieve overnight. So he spoke about self-identity versus functioning, why you lead and how you lead. That's very important. And the art of being versus art of doing. The art of being versus art of doing. Please join us again next week, Friday, as we'll be unpacking part 2 of our theme, Kingdom Leadership.